On behalf of the People's Progressive Party, I wish to extend a happy birthday greeting to President Irfan. The last week has been very eventful week in terms of the issues in the public domain. Some weeks are slow and some have a number of issues raised. So today I intend to address some of those issues, and not in a detailed manner, just to give the government's perspective and the party's perspective on these issues. A lot of the issues continue along the same vein, especially coming from the Kaichor News Quarter, of a reconfiguration of the facts and outright lies, and all aimed towards misleading people, which they do on a daily basis. So I'm going to just point out a few examples of those as we go along. But we saw the leader of the opposition going to Region 1, and he had a couple of poorly attending public meetings there. And the usual speech was doled out to the few people who were there. The standard thing about discrimination, PPP corruption, incompetence of the government, and also a whole slew of promises, what they will do should they win the elections. So, without any shame, Norton promised to empower the indigenous communities economically. He wants to make every Amerindian a contractor, because the PPP only has a few contractors in these areas. Never mind, you don't have contracts or allocation of government money to do these contracts, but he wants to make everybody a contractor. He wants to build more roads in the hinterland. He wants people to grow more food and to train more people. That's what was in this article from that I read by Demerara Waves. PNCR rolls out election promises to Amerindians. So he accused us of hypocrisy. And the most hypocritical party that you could ever find in this hemisphere, maybe one of the most hypocritical parties in the world, is APNU. And they do this, as I said, barefacedly. So they cut the budget for roads when they were in office. In the last 4 years, the last 4 or 5 budgets of the PPP from 2020, we have allocated and spent about $30 billion on mining roads, on roads, connecting roads, like we're working on the road from Moruca now to Quebana, from Mabaruma to Hosororo, and then Wauna, in the settlement itself, in Lethem. If you look at even the big sub-districts like Karasabai and Aishaltan, internal roads in all of these areas, paved roads I'm talking about, and concrete roads, leaving out the billions spent on upgrading other hinterland roads. So this is a party that cut the allocation for roads in the hinterland, and they didn't cut it from 2015. You recall that when they had the one-seat majority in 2012. From 2012 to 2015, they cut all the hinterland allocations by nearly $90 billion for roads, for hinterland airstrips, almost everything to do with indigenous communities. But he goes there again to say, we'll build more roads in your communities. And in the two places he went, like Port Kaituma and Mabaruma now, we're spending nearly $600 million in one area to do about 3 kilometers of roads, internal roads, and maybe another 400 billion to do about another 2 kilometers of internal road in those same places that he spoke at. So clearly you would see that. He promised job opportunities. Now, this was the group that took away nearly 2,000 jobs from Amerindian communities. $700 million lost in wages to those people, well, stipends for those people that lost their jobs. We have rehired not only the 2,000, but increased it to 2,700 now. We've hired another 2,000 part-time workers in the hinterland areas. We've expanded business opportunities, etc. More people are employed there. So he, in fact, his party and Norton himself and Mai Paul and all of the others, they were opposed to the part-time program that is now providing employment to nearly 2,000 people and annually providing about $1 billion of income to those communities outside of the 1-point-something billion coming out of through the CSOs in employment opportunities, over $2 billion a year going back into these communities. We have allocated through the LCDS $22.5 billion for 1 year alone. This year, there'll be another allocation. That's probably more than APNU allocated in 5 years for projects in these areas. 811 projects were done. This is leaving out the presidential grant that increased enormously. We're building 4 hospitals with nearly $100 million for the hinterland areas. These are 4 state-of-the-art hospitals with diagnostic capability. We've resumed the land titling project that they killed. I can go on and on about our commitment to hinterland development. Norton goes there. And I think the attendance at his meeting was reflective of the believability of what he was saying. Well, or the lack of believability and the lack of credibility in what he was saying. And that's why people don't take them seriously. I had warned that this will happen as we get closer to the elections. You're going to have a whole slew of promises again similar to 2015. Good life for all, pension for everybody, money for everyone, with them having no credibility or intention of fulfilling their promises. So there is one issue today that I thought I'd address. And I may not address it in great detail, so I want to come back to this issue. I started at various fora and here at my press conferences, partially talking about the issue. But in light of what happened recently, when President Ali visited Brooklyn and engaged with our people who live in Brooklyn and visited some business entities there, we had this vile, but not unpredictable call by Burke and Benchcop and the likes of them to boycott these premises. And most people will think that this may be an outlier event, that it's unusual. But there's nothing unusual about what they did. It's part of a pattern, and it's part of the PNC's core philosophy. They were just the latest manifestation, or these calls were just the latest manifestation of that philosophy. And it goes back to what I pointed out several times here at these press conferences. I pointed out that there is a core difference between the People's Progressive Party and the PNC and the AFC, but more so the PNC. That because of the lack of achievements of the PNC, they were in office for 28 years with very little to show at the end of the period. In fact, we were a poor, bankrupt country by the time they left. So with very little to show achievement-wise, they tend to campaign on a philosophy of fear. So fear, and they have to instill fear in the people who vote for them against the others. So the others are coming to get you. They can't say what they have done positively. We too have campaigned with some fear element added to it, because we campaign on the fear of the PNC to rig elections, because that's grounded in a historic reality. They have done this consistently in the 28 years they were in office and tried that again. So the fear of that and discrimination against people too. But most of our campaigns, if you look at them, are entirely positive. They say what we have done for the country. We have restored a bankrupt economy to one of the most vibrant economies in the world, even before oil. We've moved healthcare and advanced healthcare. Per capita income has grown. Businesses have grown in Guyana. Jobs, more people have jobs. We've campaigned more on housing, scholarships, education, healthcare delivery, because we can point to those things. So that's the nature of our campaign, not entirely based on fear. So many people know we accuse APNU of racism. And they have managed in the past to do the converse, to accuse the PPP of racism. And when Chetty Jagan tried to broaden the membership of this party, even after all the troubles in the 60s, people stayed away from us because their campaign of racism and fear resonated with people in their communities. Fear of the other, fear of the PPP, fear that we will discriminate against Afro-Guyanese. So it kept a large number of people away from us because of these fears. It served their purpose. And so that tool, they're unwilling to relinquish this tool because it worked well for them in the past. Now the potency of this tool, which is fear, is being eroded now. It's being eroded significantly. They don't get the same sort of resonance. And we now have to fight it. We've committed ourselves to fighting, exposing it. So when we say that if you're Indo-Guyanese, you don't have a place in the PNC, it is born out of experience. Even now, you hear complaints from Ubraj and all of the others who are in there that they don't have a place in the PNC. If you're Amerindians, you know your experience is also the experience that they voiced in Parliament about greedy Amerindian people, etc. You have no place there in the bosoms of the PNC. If you're any other race, even your people of mixed heritage, you don't have a place in APNU. So people may be tempted to say, if I'm Afro-Guyanese, then this is my party because it caters for my interests, it represents my cause. But that's false too. If you're Afro-Guyanese, you have no place in the PNC. And why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? Because that's what I want to get to today. Because many people may be seduced into believing, well, okay, I'm Afro-Guyanese. If they're against everyone else, they must be for me. If they're against Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and mixed people, they must be for me. And it's an uncomfortable subject that people don't like to talk about often. But they're not really in favor of Afro-Guyanese. And why am I saying this? So APNU wants to create a victim mentality among Afro-Guyanese. You're discriminated against. Just a week ago, Ogunseyi said Afro-Guyanese own, falsely, less than 10% of Guyana, and they're nearly 50% of the population. A false figure, but they keep perpetuating it. They say it. So, do not apply for scholarships. We heard that from several APNU leaders. You're never going to get it from this government. Those who defied and applied, they got the scholarships. Tens of thousands of people, in fact, maybe 14,000 Afro-Guyanese who are studying, more than any time under the PNC in the whole history. But still, oh, you're discriminated against. Don't apply for house lots, you're not going to get it. But more Afro-Guyanese have got house lots under the PPP than they would ever give under the APNU. But you must not apply. You must not apply for the part-time jobs because you're not going to get it. The people in Linden were told that. Never mind, now you have 1,200 mainly Afro-Guyanese working in Linden on the part-time jobs that they never provided. You must not apply for the cash grant because you will not get it. The experience is very different. And why do they want that? They don't want people to grow. They don't want Afro-Guyanese to get wealthier. So we'd keep them not owning anything. We made it clear we want our people, those who support the PPP, and we unabashedly say this. You come to us, we'll push you to get positive. We want you to have jobs, we want you to own your own homes, we want you to grow wealthier, because we believe that wealthier people will still support the PPP. I think they believe if Afro-Guyanese are not dependent on them, then they will so-called stray from them ethnically. And that is precisely why they don't want people to own things, to get a good job. So keep them in this victim's mentality. And look at every one of them who says this. Oh, so Nigel Hughes, Afro-Guyanese not getting, his thing is they couldn't get an oil block. Only Indian people getting oil blocks. He didn't say anything when we have a young, progressive group of young Guyanese women, Afro-Guyanese, who got 2 of the blocks. But that's to be ignored. Now, wouldn't say anything about that, but trying to create this victims mentality. IPADG is the same thing. They got nearly 500 million from the government. Marcus exposed what's going on at IPADG. They don't helping Afro-Guyanese, but they are saying the government is practicing, collecting nearly 500 million to say the government is practicing apartheid. But they got the money to help people to grow out of it, empower them. So they wouldn't not do that because they want to keep Afro-Guyanese in that state. It is this constant thing. It started off from the early days of APNU with state control. You must go to them for everything. And if you remain poor, then you can always get people to vote for you because you feel a victim of the PPP. So what bothers them most? Why you think they run into South Georgetown when we're doing roads there? They don't want the roads done, because then if the roads are done, people would say, hold on a minute, roads are being done here too. It's not discrimination. We can have roads to walk on too. Why you think that local government elections, they said, Independence Boulevard, we're building that to sell out people land. Not because we want to help people there and to grow that part of the city, but because we want to take away their land and sell it out. This is to keep people in that mindset. So what happened in Brooklyn now, it is destroying that mindset, because Rickford Burke and people like Benchcop, what they've been doing, they've been creating this victimhood mentality, and people like Burke would extort people. He makes his money from arguing. He's struggling for the rights of Afro-Guyanese. He doesn't care one bit about Afro-Guyanese rights. He's been there 30 years, never did anything for people here. But the president shattered a myth that people in Brooklyn don't want to talk to the government. He shattered a myth, and that's why they reacted. So what do they do now? For Afro-Guyanese who dare to want to get wealthy or to own a own home or choose the PPP or any other force or speak out for their own rights, who want to come out of this victimhood mentality, they're subjected to vilification. The luncheons and the others, you remember them all the time. They were slaves, house slaves, stooges, etc. Up to now, they use those names for people because people dare to say, I want to grow out of this victimhood mentality. I want to be part of Guyana and working with all my people, progress personally. Because then you can't fool them that they're victims anymore. They vilify, they shame people, and now they boycott. They boycott your business because you dare to have a civilized conversation with the president of Guyana. Boycott. These are the tools that they use all the time because they want to keep this mentality there. And look at every single one of them. Ogunse, Nigel Hughes, and all of the others. The whole entire APNU. It's always about victimhood. It's something, or you're being discriminated against. So this is, IPADG does this thing. You remember how, what's her name, Ferguson went to Plaisance and a family there in the elections, local government elections, that said, we're supporting the PPP. She went down there and said, no, you can't do this, etc. Because the family dared to make progress. People who come to us, whether they're traditional supporters, we're always positive. We want them to grow. We believe if they're wealthier and we help them to get wealthier or get a scholarship or a job, they would support us. So we don't have a fear for them to grow out of poverty. They have a fear of people growing out of victimhood because then they can't use racism, which is their primary tool of mobilizing. And that is their mortal fear. And that is why they react this violently to all that happened recently. So it's not isolated. It's not isolated. So do they really represent Afro-Guyanese? Although they say that, oh, we are supporting Afro-Guyanese. They don't. They really want to use Afro-Guyanese for political power. And look, when they had the political power, how they used it. So in Linden, who got the land? Who got the land in Linden? It's just a few people, not ordinary Afro-Guyanese. If you're concerned about the skewing of wealth in favor of other races, how is it that for 33 years of our independent Guyana, 58 years of independent Guyana, when you had the control over state power, you were running the government, how could you ensure that Afro-Guyanese grew? How could you not? Because they pauperize Afro-Guyanese. They pauperize Afro-Guyanese by making sure they were mainly in the public sector. If you look at 1990 and 1992, the average salary in the public sector was $25 by pauperizing a large amount of Afro-Guyanese when they were in office. They didn't help much in the period in 2015 too. So you had 33 years of control over the executive and 36 years of control over the parliament, basically, because from 2012 to 2015, they had a one-seat majority. 36 years of our 58 years, they had control over the parliament. How did they use this in favor of Afro-Guyanese? The entire country, including the lives of many Afro-Guyanese, was destroyed. And so we need to go beyond, for those who may be tempted to believe, oh, if they hate everyone else, all the other races, they may love us. It's not so. We want to keep people in bondage. So when Ogunse says, we want to give a few handouts to the organizations to keep them under control and calling people disparaging names directly, it's not the handout, it's the scholarship too. We are trying to change people's lives, all of our people. Every single race, every single religion, because we see them not just as Guyanese, but potential supporters of the PPP. We want them to get wealthier, to get a job. So then we would argue, we're in government when you got this, so vote for the PPP. That's what we are campaigning on, trying to grow people's lives, not keep them down, negative all the time. So it is, I'm going to say, it's not that, it's the scholarships, it's the jobs, it's the land that were allocated. Just look at the last 4 years and you will see it's not handouts to Afro-Guyanese. It's substantive set of issues that will transform their lives. When we return the grant to the children, we did it for all of our children. We're doubling old age pension for all of our people, including Afro-Guyanese and everyone else. But we're also doing it for the sugar workers and the Amerindians because we believe in everyone moving forward. So this is an important issue, important issue that I will come back to, because sometimes people might be tempted to believe, oh, I'm Afro-Guyanese, therefore these guys are for me. If they're against everyone else, they have to be for me. But they're not really, because they want to keep you in that state. And that is what they capitalize on. People like Burke and the bench cop, they make money, I believe, on the side. Now, if people feel there is no cause to fight for, why would they give them any money, donations? And Burke is a criminal. He extorts everyone. I think he's worried more about the donations he will not get anymore in these places. So that's why you see such kinds of reactions. And it is something, I don't have enough time to explore it, and it is something we need to talk a bit more about. And put the same people under scrutiny because they were in office. Heinz, he now suddenly has all of these things and suggestions. But when they had the cushy jobs in the 5 years, you think they cared about any Afro-Guyanese getting land? You think they cared about anything else? They were looking after themselves. You think Nigel Hughes cared anything? Cathy Hughes was busy getting contract in her ministry for herself, for her own company. You think they cared any? Where was this manifestation of the love for Afro-Guyanese? It was non-existent, and we need to expose this. The iPad G2 on the APNU. Where was this love? They got lots of money for Afro-Guyanese. So I think we need to really do this. And it's a conversation this country has to have because APNU has too long divided our people along that line as though they are the champions of Afro-Guyanese. It's not so. It's not so. In fact, they're the worst thing that could happen to Afro-Guyanese because they want to preach victimhood everywhere they go. You just listen to their speeches. Nothing positive to young kids. Not about get a scholarship, go and study, get a job, go apply for the house lot, get something, start a business, take the grant from the government. Nothing about that. Oh, don't worry, don't shake Ali's hand. Don't shake Ali's hand. Don't eat the roti that Ali cooked. That kind of thing. That is it, all the time. The VP is a demon, demonic party. Jagdeo is Satan. That's all they come about. Everything is about that. And you don't getting issues. When are we going to talk about changing the lives for all of our people? And that's why this party is growing. That's why this party is going. And we have a Congress, and we have had over an indication that over 3,000 people have delegates and observers may come to this Congress. That's those who are registered now, over 3,000 delegates and observers. That's about 3 times the size of any previous Congress, and they're coming from Region 10, from the hinterland areas, from Berbice, from Essequibo, every region in the country, in large numbers. And justifying the strength of our party, its multi-ethnic nature, but also it's not even a demonstration because we could have got more people to join the party because people see where we're going and we're working for all of our people. So we will come back to this conversation again. But the recent events, the vile thing about boycotting people in Brooklyn, etc. It's not unusual, it's not different, and it's part of their arsenal. Boycott is part of their arsenal to intimidate people who may want to engage with us, to vilify them, to shame them, so they would be scared in their communities to come out to meetings because next thing, they have these very, very vile people like the bench cops and the Burks, etc., and the Duncans, criticizing people. That is their biggest fear. The Kaichur news again. Power ship will cost Guyana more than $200 million for 2 years. Patterson. So either Patterson is crazy, or Kaichur can't do mathematics again. They had a big issue with mathematics. So in the body of the text, it says, according to Patterson, and the calculation would be here, for 2 years, the contract will cost us $46 million for capacity and O&M. So that's what it will cost. They have a number here in the body of the document. Then they quoted Patterson and saying that it will cost us 55 cents per kilowatt hour, when it's just, we pointed out how it will be 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour for capacity and O&M. And even if you add fuel, because any generator, if we put our generator, we'd still have to use fuel to supply the power. But that's 13 cents per kilowatt hour at the current price of HFO. So maximum about 21 cents per kilowatt hour. They have 55 cents per kilowatt hour. A total fake figure. I don't know how come these people, it's so disgusting. But I don't know how you deal with this sort of thing. We're a newspaper or I don't know if it's Patterson said that or them, but they quoted Patterson as saying 55 cents per kilowatt hour. Then they quoted him as saying it's 46 million for the 2 years. And then they have a headline at $200 million US for the 2 years. This is the usual fabrication on a daily basis. It goes on in the Kaichoro news. So 7 countries now fully powered by renewables, but Jagdeo claims same cannot be done in Guyana. So the G20 countries, they produce about 80% of the emissions in the world, and they're less than 30% powered by renewable energy. I explained 1,000,000 times as to why. So hydropower, if we had the hydro that they killed, and listen what they said about the hydro. They said, oh, it was not basically APNU. We didn't have consensus on the way forward with the hydro. That's how Kaichor described it. The hydropower was killed by APNU. Patterson lied in Parliament up to a couple days ago, saying it was 30 cents per kilowatt hour, when the power purchase agreement would have been 10 cents per kilowatt hour. It's a total lie. Kaichor carried that. Kaichor News is the one that said it will be $2 billion of debt when we were buying power, so there was no debt to the government of Guyana, because the repayment of the debt, the cost of construction would be part of the price of the electricity you are buying at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Kaichor News was the one that said we wouldn't have enough water there to run the hydropower, although there was building of a reservoir like any hydropower in the world. They said it was corruption, Fip Motilal, everybody, and killed it. That was supposed to produce power by 2070. If that had come online, our peak demand now is about 180 megawatts of power. That would have supplied 165 megawatts of power. We would have been able to be nearly 100% from renewable base load with hydropower. They killed it, and they said, Jagdeo said it can't be the same done. Kaichor News and APNU killed it, so we could have been nearly powering our whole country with renewable energy by 2017. But they killed it, now complain, oh, we can't do it. Now they're saying we can do it through solar. So I ask simply, what about the days when you don't have sunshine, 4 days of rainfall? And where would the power come from? So even if you do batteries, which are very expensive now, very expensive to do power, it's 14, 15 cents per kilowatt hour with batteries. But even if you had batteries, and 4 days you don't have, it's cloudy in Guyana, and you can't recharge your batteries, what happens? We'll be without power forever. if you have a long rainy season. We don't have power. It cannot be base load. Glenn Lal said on a program he could get the power, solar power, for 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and he'd send someone with a proposal. Up to now, we're waiting for the proposal. 2 years have passed. Not true. A lie again. So how is it going to be from what renewable? If you kill the hydropower, which renewable? Wind? What about when the wind stops blowing many times in the day? Wind don't blow continuously all the time. So that is how you have to have backup with fossil fuel, the same backup. It's common sense. You can buy energy from the renewable, but you can't buy capacity. There's a big difference that they don't understand. Capacity means all day long, something that runs all day long. We don't need power for every 5 minutes when the wind stops. You say, all right, you'll have a blackout until the wind comes on. That's why it can't be base load. The hydropower is the base load. And all these countries, they said, the 7 countries that are powered by renewable, it's either thermal, like some places like, the Iceland, because they have a lot of hot springs there, so they can do that. So it's geothermal, or it's water. It can't be 100% renewable from wind or from solar. And we don't have, can't do that there. We can't build the hydro. Therefore, we have to go to fossil fuel. And we are now doing it, but with the gas, which is 50% less polluting than the bunker C that we're using. And a project that would allow us to cut the price of energy by 50% and supply the country. It is as simple as that. How many times do we have to explain the same thing? But they choose 7 countries, and Jagdeo claims it can be done in Guyana for those reasons. For those reasons. In fact, they're the ones doing this. I didn't want to tackle these issues, but they get down. These peeping Tom, they snipe without naming themselves. So there is another thing about, we're telling lies about our economic history. We're telling lies. This is an attempt to justify that somehow APNU has a track record of economic progress. So we hear things like, the PPP inherited a vibrant economy. When 1992, we were bankrupt. More than 100% of revenue went to service debt, no infrastructure development in the country, blackouts that lasted 5 days, nothing in this country. You didn't have any infrastructure. Let's get that clear. 2, triple-digit inflation, interest rates for mortgages, nearly 40%. That was the reality. So they said that we had a small percentage growth between the time I took office to 2006, that the record would show that we didn't have high economic growth rates in that period. The average was very low. So that is true in that period. But let's talk about the period from 97, when we started seeing lower growth rates. 97, 98, everyday street protests. From 1997, the elections, to 2001, 2002, every day was street protests. Street protests. From 2002 to 2005 or so, APNU was directly in touch with the criminals who wreak havoc. And we're going to have the commission of inquiry that they wanted now to look into that period, and it will expose their link to the criminal cabal that they were hoping to use to overthrow the government. Remember, the same people who were killing, the psychopaths who were killing people, including babies, they appeared on some television stations to say, in fatigue, in army fatigue with a gun, saying they were freedom fighters. The same psychopaths, and were were cheered on by many APNU commentators and leaders. In fact, they had regular visits from many of the APNU leaders, although they were criminals killing people, policemen, etc. That was the era. And so let us look at a few figures though. If you Google, go online and check gross domestic product of Guyana, you can do it on your phone now. 1992, $373.6 million US dollars. That's what the GDP, the whole country, the whole economy. If you look at 1999, when I took over, it was $694.8 million. So it was just about maybe kind of double. And then in 2011, when I left office, it was $3.691 billion. So it moved from 373 million to $3.6 billion from 92 to 2011. A period of 19 years or so. That means close to 1,000% increase in our GDP. It had increased tenfold, 10 times the size it was before. Right? So 10 times increase nearly in the size of the economy over that period. Let's look at the period in APNU. 1964, 1965, $210 million. 1980, it went up when we had the commodity boom to $610 million. By 1992, it fell back to $373 million. We lost half of the size of our economy from 1980 to 1992. It shrunk by 50%. The economy shrunk by 50%. And it had grown over the 28 years from 1965 to 1992 by 70%. 28 years by 70%. In the 19 years, in spite of the street protests, in spite of the criminal activities, the economy had grown not by 70%, by nearly 1,000%, tenfold. Even with all the rebasing that they're talking about. So this editorial here, this Jagdeo's economic, unmasking Jagdeo's economic legacy, they don't look at this story. They talk about that particular period. We had the worst flood in 2005. Where we lost the equivalent of 60% of gross domestic product in that flood. And notwithstanding all of that, our economy grew. So I can deal a lot with this sort of thing, but I don't want to get stuck on it. The same people who are writing these things, and I would love if they want to talk. I don't even have to debate this because so many people are taking this on. And they talk about rebasing. So the rebasing would have also reflected growth in the same years that they were talking about low GDP growth, but may not have been captured by official statistics. But that's the reality. And every one of you, please do that. Just Google the growth rates that I talk about. GDP growth rate Guyana, or GDP Guyana 2011, GDP Guyana 1999, GDP Guyana 1992, GDP Guyana 1965 or 64, and so then you can see what it is for yourself. You see progression. And look at the steep decline from 1980. You don't need to believe me. You can do it yourself, and you will see how stupid this editorial on Marcin Jagdeo's economic legacy. They talk about the flawed models of the Marriott Hotel. Imagine these shameless people. They were opposed to the Marriott Hotel, and now they're talking about my legacy is the flawed model of the Marriott, a hotel we built for 50-something million. Unfortunately, the guy died now. But that hotel, as shown by a bid, is one of the most profitable in the world now. It's one of the hotels. And they talk about that in Unmasking My Legacy, that it's a flawed one. And the Berbice Bridge further tarnish his legacy. Berbice Bridge that has served nearly 20 years, without which we can even have a talk about the development in Berbice. And that's part of my tarnished legacy too. The same lies over and over and over again. So maybe I shouldn't go on more about the Kaieteur news, but I just wanted to deal with a few of these issues. City Council, as I said before, the City Council, they had a total dereliction of duty, and they continue to be in dereliction of their duty. It's a hustle only at the City Council by the leadership there, and they're not interested in the welfare of the city. And I can say these without any fear of contradiction. I can make these assertive statements. This would be fortified by their track record and the long period APNU has had control over the city. And any progress you have seen in the city, any change you've been seen in the city over that period, and there have been many changes, can all be traced back to the central government in the periods when PPP was in office. All of it could be traced to that. So let's get that clear. So we saw, in an attempt to excuse his neglect, the mayor went to some country in Africa. I don't know what he was doing there, but I saw he ran up a huge bill on the telephone bill. It's circulating now, but I don't think the Africans would have any use for him there. But he went there on a joyride, and he was trying to busy claim the land there, block an investment, a 300-odd million investment, but he hasn't had the same kind of energy and zeal to look at the market, where they're collecting revenue every day from the market vendors, and they knew the place was in a state of disrepair. Not of any attention. They would spend days and days debating how some issue that is extraneous to the welfare of the people of the city. But he boldly put out in, I think it is a letter to the Stabroek News, City Council does not need a bailout. It needs the monies owed by the government. So he claims in this letter that the government owes the City Council in rates and taxes $6 billion. Last year, on June 12, 2023, Obraj Narain is his title, Obraj, the Obraj, he claimed it was $1 billion in rates and taxes. On June 12, 2023, read what he said. The government had owed $1 billion in rates and taxes. Now, this mayor, less than a year later, says it's gone to $6 billion. Now, it's all a lie, conjecture. And people don't check for consistency. I'm sure the media will never check that for consistency. It's a lie. So that's one. So this city council owes GRA $2.1 billion. GRA just got a judgment to levy on city assets for $2.1 billion they owe GRA. At any time, GRA could come in and sell off a lot of things there and get the assets. But GRA has put a hold for the time being on that. So they owe that. Secondly, they owe NIS nearly $400 million that they're deducting from people and not paying to NIS. the city council has been doing this. The Public Works Ministry has spent nearly $15 billion in the city directly on roads and everything else. So, and you've seen this everywhere, upgrading the city. So you can't say we're starving the city. We're taking over, beautifying the city, planting trees. Now, they're not doing any of this work along the seawall, along the railway embankment, by the army compound, all of the trees there, etc. Boulevard in between Prashad Nagar and Campbellville, all of this central government. We're spending another $500 million on doing all the grounds in the city, including putting in lights in the city. So there's no issue about starving of funds. We're spending a lot of money investing in the city. On D&I, we're spending over $1 billion, and internal works, putting in greater pumping capacity at Lelendal to assist with flooding in the city. Huge sums of money. So he is arguing 1 year, $1 billion the government owes in rates and taxes. He's bumped it up unilaterally to $6 billion, a lie. That's what he's saying. And even the $1 billion is dodgy. But we've spent $20 billion, over $20 billion in the city, and it's counting all the time. We were in Sophia recently to fix all the roads in Sophia. We're starting to fix the roads there. We're doing it in everywhere you go in the city. The city council has nothing to do, although those are under the jurisdiction of the city. If you look at the law, it says the city shall be responsible for all of these roads. And so let's talk a bit about how much they claim we owe them between, well, $1 billion last year and $6 billion now. So how much write-offs did they give, and how transparent was it? The city, you remember local government election, we argued that they must announce what the write-off policy for taxes that are owed to the city, so that everyone could benefit from the same amnesty, so-called amnesty, if they wanted to give. Not that you can go into the mayor's office if you're a businessman X and you owe $100 million and walk out of the office from the leadership of the city council, the PNC leadership, walk out from their office with a write-off of $90 million and you only pay $10 million. And then another person goes in there, he has $50 million and he gets maybe $2 million written off, he has to pay $48 million. That is what has been happening there. And we know that the leadership in there, that they are using this, it's for their own benefit. And that's why we call for transparent system for writing off all these taxes. They're writing off everybody, but the government taxes that they claim we owe falsely. They're not thinking about writing that off, because of course, you wouldn't pay a bribe for the write off the government taxes. So that is what's happening. How much have they written off in the past several years? 2, why is it that on the 28th of January 2001, that's under our tenure, this city council leased commercial land along the East Bank corridor, property of the city council, 99 years to the PNC, gave them a lease at 20,000 Guyana dollars per year. That's the lease fee for 99 years. The PNC is now turned around and rented out the property and making a huge profit. Imagine that city council had leased the PPP a property for 99 years, a commercial property. Everywhere it would have been. They got it there. That's in the public domain. I don't see people asking the mayor or the others why this happened. Now, we hear a lot about this Obraj, and he talks a lot everywhere. Do you know that on the 1st of March 2020. When was the election? I think it was the 2nd of March. One day before the 2020 elections, NISIL entered an agreement with Bharrat Jagdeo for 17.4 acres of land in Wales, one day before the elections. This matter was not concluded, the payments, etc., until June. That was when they knew the elections were lost. They lost the elections, etc. So they entered the agreement but concluded it till June. So 17.4 acres. And Bharrat Jagdeo is not the unique in this regard, because a lot of other Apnu people got land in that period. So NISIL wrote them, give him a notice to quit, and he agreed with it, because I think this was on the 23rd of September. They were scared that we will file criminal charges against them for the transfer of state assets. So Bharrat agreed basically to give up the land because got a notice to quit from NISIL on the 23rd of September 2020. Then recently he filed in September 2023 now, the same Bharrat has filed an action against NISIL, claiming that he has a valid lease, because he thinks now the time has passed, we wouldn't file criminal charges because we have moved on for all the wickedness that took place. So now he's contesting that he has a valid lease again. It tells you a lot about what happened in that period. You haven't even scratched the surface of what happened. And this is the guy who talks a lot about corruption and everything else. One day before the election, he signed this agreement, 17.4 acres, and didn't conclude it until June of the 2020, and was willing to give it up when he was scared of the criminal charges. But now he thinks that, oh, I can challenge it in court now because they might not file criminal charges. I think he is waiting, maybe there's a statute of limitation. But it doesn't change the moral bankruptcy of these people and the lies that they tell all the time and the holier than thou attitude that they have and the pronouncements that they make all the time about PPP, corruption, etc. You don't have anything as vile as this. Just imagine if this had happened in the pre-2015 era. What would have happened? Sarah would have ransacked everybody a day before the elections. They had 45 audits done, paid 130-something million by the, and some of the auditors were people who were sympathetic to them, and they couldn't file any criminal charges that could stand against us. But the same people, and that is the kind of thing that goes on at the city council. When we claim that you can't pass money through the city council because it gets frittered away. It will just be squandered in this manner. So this is what I have to say about the city council. We'll continue to work to improve the lives of the people in Georgetown because we made a commitment to the people all over our country, whether they live in our strongholds in Port Moran or in Region 3 or East Coast and more, or they live in the hinterland where the towns, like we're investing more in Bartica and Madia and Lethem, or in New Amsterdam or Georgetown, wherever our people live. And when I say our people, I don't mean PPP supporters. I mean our people. Then we made a commitment. So in spite of this city council and all of its shenanigans, we will continue to invest in the city and to ensure that our city grows. This is something that I wanted to make very, very clear. We have had the ruling from Justice Kissoon on the matter that was brought before him by the GTU. And so the government has issued a press release on this matter, which reflects our views on the matter, the government's views on the matter. The Attorney General has indicated that we intend to appeal this matter, and we believe that, given all that we've said before, that these matters were adjudicated in the past, and that you have precedent in some superior courts, not just here, but globally, that upheld the principle of no work, no pay. We have also pointed out to rule otherwise would lead to chaos and a nonsensical situation. That it defies common sense. Because if a person doesn't work and still has the right to receive pay, then who will work in a country? So the Attorney General has pointed out that by converting the freedom to strike, which is enshrined in our Constitution, because we believe that unions and workers should have the right to withdraw freely their labor if they wish, and if their union so decides. But by converting the freedom to strike to a right to strike, and then ruling, using that as the underlying principle, ruling that people have to be paid for the days when they're striking, we believe that this would lead to chaos in any society. And I'm shocked that the opposition will endorse such a principle. So imagine the PNC in office, which is hard to imagine, and I'm really, you know, it's just now I just had a flashback, and it made me cringe. But just imagine, let's stretch our imagination to the sky and imagine they're in office. And that they had such a ruling. That means it's not for government alone. Every private sector body that has a union, banks, DIH, DDL, any company in which the workers are unionized, now can lay down their tools and say, we're now working. And those private entities have to continue paying them, because the Constitution of Guyana now says that you have to do so. Not the Constitution, but the judge's ruling now say you have to do that by upturning this tested decision. And so, as the government statement said now, you're depriving the other party of property, because my money, my wage that I have to pay to the workers, that's my property now. And I have to give my property over to someone else without any corresponding value being exchanged. And so that is what APNU would have upheld. They applaud a decision like that. So this country could go into chaos tomorrow if that ruling stands. If every union in the public sector and in the private sector say we're not working anymore because we're going to get paid in any case, then where would that be? This society, we'd have chaos in this society. And that's what APNU conveniently applauded. And Roysdale Ford, well, they're going to lose this in a major way in the upper courts. We've seen that before. We've had decisions that we've had to appeal. There are many decisions before that we had to get overturned at other levels. And it's going to happen. And the same people they're encouraged to strike would then have to get their pay deducted. Because when the decision is made ultimately in other superior courts, then they would still, if they go on strike, the decisions, they get their salaries deducted, because this is an age-old principle. So that is the first thing why we cannot allow it to stand. Not that we are vindictive, but no normal society in the world, anywhere in the world, would have that. Any country in the world, you show me a single country in the world where if you withdraw your labor for a whole year, based on this principle, you never work, that you're obligated to get paid forever. And that's why we believe it's a bad, bad decision. And secondly, I can only go by what I read in the newspapers. So I've not read the judgment. I asked the Attorney General whether the written judgment has been handed over because we need it for the appeal. It was promised by the judge. He said he has not received it as yet. But I see here in the newspaper, in Stabroek News, of particular note was President Irfan Ali's meeting with some teachers at State House, which Justice Kissoon criticized as not constituting collective bargaining with a recognized union. Now, the president never claimed that this was collective bargaining. But I think it's presumptuous of a judge to tell the president who he should meet and who he shouldn't meet. This is the elected president of Guyana, who is the head of the executive branch of the government, which is separate from the judiciary. The president can choose at any time to meet whomever he wants to, and for whatever reason, not to have a judge, any judge, for that matter, tell him what he should do or he shouldn't do. And what it constitutes or not. The president never claimed it was collective bargaining. He has a right to meet the citizens of this country in whatever form or manner he chooses fit to do. He was elected by the people of this country. And judges, there is a separation and they have authority. But the president is more accountable than judges. Judges don't have to face the people of this country. Every 5 years, you have to go back to the people of this country for validation or a renewal of your mandate. And the people are ultimate arbiters of your conduct. So in this case, he wasn't doing anything illegal for the court to, but it's presumptuousness to criticize the president. Purely presumptuous. And so that's another point that I found appalling in what I read here. And then the third issue is the vilification of the public officers who cannot respond because they're fearful of being called before the court for contempt. So if they could have responded in kind, I'm sure they would have had some choice words to say here, but they can't do so. The vilification, misrepresentation of their role. And so that is reflected in the government statement too. And so the chief labor officer, a consummate professional, and the chief education officer, another hardworking, consummate professional, both who have worked in good faith and worked diligently in the exercise of their responsibilities, come in for criticism and vilification unfairly without being able to respond because of fear of being hauled before the court for contempt. So that's all I'm going to say at this point in time. But we will appeal this decision, and we are, in terms of the union, the teachers' union, we are ready to engage. I saw they're ready to engage. We've made that clear from the last time we engaged that we are prepared. They had spoken about a multi-year agreement, and we're prepared to engage with them on a multi-year agreement starting from 2024. And we remain committed to that. So I've seen it's not widespread, because I think most people are supportive of us going to the Security Council and getting a statement from the Security Council. But I've seen in a couple of places very limited, some attempt to question or second guess whether we should have gone to the Security Council for Venezuela's persistent violation of the Argyle Agreement and of the provisional measures announced by the ICJ. And I'm not going to get into the nuances of all that took place there. But we were very pleased that unanimously, every member of the Security Council, including all the permanent members, call on the parties to abide by the ruling of the ICJ, that is respect for the provisional measures. And what do the provisional measures say? That Venezuela, no party should alter the status quo on the ground. So that for us is a victory, because now the Security Council has taken the decision of the ICJ and has endorsed that decision and called on all the parties to abide by the ruling of the ICJ and the provisional measures. And the provisional measures preserve the status quo. And what is the status quo? That the 1899 award is valid until the ICJ rules otherwise. That is a victory for our country. It's not easy to get the unanimous support of the Security Council, including all the permanent members. And so I'm not going to get into all of the details on that matter. I've seen a lot written, particularly by the Starbuck News, on the Public Accounts Committee, carrying their usual propaganda of people like Figueroa and Mai Paul, two of the most unaccountable people that I know, and I don't want to get into their track record. I've spoken about them already. But we have done more work at the Public Accounts Committee, in fact, cleared more years of backlog than they did in the 5 years. That's one. And two, I think it requires another response like the one that Gail Teixeira did some time back, where she actually counted the number of meetings and spoke definitively. So before I came to the press conference, I called Gail and I said to Gail, I think it's time you address this issue again, because Gail has all the institutional knowledge and she is very much familiar with what is going on there. So I think it's best that she addresses this issue. She promised that she will do so shortly. I don't want to go again to Kaichor, but I see Ramjatan has become the star now. Oil spill provisions in 6 projects spell doomsday for Guyana, Ramjatan. First of all, they hid under their tenure, they hid the environment agreement, the permits. They never published them. They hid the licenses. They never published them. We published all the licenses from the past, and every license and environmental permit that we issued, we published. So they are available for them to look at now. I spoke with the Kemraj Parshram from EPA about this, and he said it's just misrepresentation, that what they're claiming is new in this agreement was actually in the agreements of the past, that they don't really read the things. And knowing Ramjatan and the others, I know he's not gonna read anything. It's gonna just look conveniently, try to suck up to the Kaichor news and to get a headline there, because if you criticize the oil and gas industry, never mind you could be a lunatic, a raving lunatic, you could get a headline there. So that's what he is looking for. So there's nothing in the agreements and the current environmental permit that weakens Exxon's obligation to tackle oil spills or to ensure that they provide compensation to people should there be a spill. Further, we are fortifying that with oil spill legislation, which will be passed hopefully before the end of before we go into recess in August. That will further strengthen the government and the regulatory authorities' tools to be able not just to manage a spill, but to enforce liabilities on offending parties, including parties that transport fuel. So we made it clear, Ramjatan is looking for a headline. I've been assured that, because I'm trying to understand what they're really saying, and it's hard to understand what they say. So he assured me, spoke with him, he said there's nothing new or anything that weakens. I've not seen anything that weakens our Exxon's obligations here. The other one is Guyana losing more than what it's gaining without renegotiation of oil contract. Ramjatan. This is the Ramjatan who said this is a God-sent contract. I can show you his quotation. They say it is a God-sent contract and that APNU should be lauded for signing this, implying as though they're bringing this development to Guyana. That's why I had to point out that they didn't find oil under APNU or AFC. They just screwed up the contract in 2016. And we know the history of that. And we know Global Witness and we know Trotman's role and all of that. And they've become the star now. The same people who were cheerleaders for this contract, who hid this contract, and now saying we're losing more than it's gaining without renegotiation of oil contract, Ramjatan. But of course, he's looking for relevance. If you say something like that, you get a headline in this tabloid, or this rag that you call Kaichor News. So that is, I have a number of other things, but today I have other meetings, so I think I'm going to just end there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and our Williams Culture News. A few weeks ago, you said that Exxon has too many assets for you to list to support the billions that you would have said that they had in assets. Can you say, or can you direct us to an assets registry where we can go to basically scrutinize these billions in assets that you claim Exxon has?
I dealt with that issue already. Today is a short day. Move on.
You've dealt with
You
it.
can put your headline, whatever. Jagdeo refuses to point out where the asset registry is. You go and do your research. Why do I have to baby you all the time? There is no pride in researching for yourselves. There's no pride in researching for yourselves. Do I have to do your work as a journalist or newspaper? Move on. Let me move on. I'm getting a bit tired. I have a lot of work and to do research for you. Yeah, in the cultural news. Go on. Do your research.
If I had found it,
yes,
I would not
right.
be asking.
You go on and ask.
Secondly, the sixth environmental impact assessment for the EIA 46 project indicates that there is potential risk of a tsunami occurring. Can you say, as the head of this sector, what mitigation processes you have put in place should this occur?
A tsunami? No, I didn't expect that one. So I really, you shocked me here. A tsunami, I didn't expect that one. And I didn't answer that one before, so I can't use that excuse that I answered it before. So a tsunami caused by our drilling offshore? Is that a tsunami caused by us producing oil?
In some explorations for oil, you know that there are seismic activity.
Is there a tsunami caused by us producing oil offshore?
The EIA says it's a potential risk.
Yeah, but is there a tsunami caused by us producing oil offshore? Are we going to cause this tsunami by extracting oil from these areas?
Looking at the location and the fact that the EIA says that it is basically where two tectonic plates meet, you do know that an earthquake is caused if the tectonic plates shift, right?
Okay.
And under sea, the motion of that earthquake can actually trigger very large waves, and a tsunami is a large wave. I'm not saying that the current explorations would, but it's a potential risk.
Thank you very much for your research on tectonic plates and stuff like that. So, tectonic plates have nothing to do with production of oil. That's what a point I'm making. We're not going to stop to produce oil offshore. We'll not stop the tectonic plates. We can't hold them back. These are major shifts in the earth, under the earth crust. Whether we produce oil offshore or not, we can't stop the movement of these plates, right? So if that is what you're saying, that it will be caused by movement of these tectonic plates, then no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to stop them, including producing or not producing oil. So what are we going to do as a country? So we will, if you have a tsunami, we can build maybe a 40 feet high wall along the seawall to block the waves. That could be a possibility, but that's not impractical. It's not going to happen. What do you suggest that we do if we have a tsunami? Every country could be submerged in this area. But things have to make sense. So there is a possibility of anything happening. A possibility of an earthquake happening. We may be able to change our building codes a bit to accommodate for earthquakes, etc., if we build tall buildings. But you can't prevent the forces of nature from creating calamity and these severe weather-related or climate-related problems or disasters. If that was the case, places like Turkey and Iran and all those that are part of very active regions that cause earthquake, etc., they would have solved them. So I didn't get that one. This one about the tsunami now. So we put Glenn Lal to ring fence the tsunami. He could ring fence the tsunami since he ring fence and keep all the water there. Okay, so it's a.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Rihanna, Kaichur News. My first question is, now that the top bidder for the Marriott Hotel has died, what becomes of this transaction? Will it be handed over to the second highest evaluated bidder, Mr. Badal?
No, I don't think you have it right again in Kaichur. Let me give you a little bit of the history of your own newspaper. So your newspaper said that this was a project that I owned. Up to recently, Glenn Lal had that view. I said, if you can find I own any part of this hotel, I will resign. He promised to get me the details, never did. It was a lie. Secondly, they said it's a white elephant. The project turned out to be one of the most profitable projects. Thirdly, we went out, you had that we should first of all not sell the hotel, and because it's a cash cow. So I was wondering, how could Kaichur News move from a white elephant to now it becoming a cash cow, the same hotel? But you had an editorial about it becoming a cash cow. It's contradictory. We went out to tender. We then got a couple of bids, one for 55, and I think it's 65, somewhere around that level. Badal came in at around 50-something million. The government of Guyana said, we're not accepting that bid. We don't believe it's reflective of the true value of the hotel. We're going out back. Kaichur News then argued that we must sell it to the lower of the two bids, to Badal for 50-something million dollars. We were told by other newspapers that we'll never get a higher bid because some Wall Street analyst said you couldn't get a higher bid. We got two higher bids, one for 91 million and another for 80-something million. In the second round, Badal was not in the second round. So he was in the first round, and he had the lower of the two bids. The second round that went out was a 91, I think, from this gentleman who just passed away, and another bid for 86. We may have to invite in that company to see if you can conclude an arrangement in the second bid. And if you can't, if the bid is still not valid, because bids have a validity period, you may just, the government may decide to go back out or just to keep the hotel. There's no rush to conclude anything here because we're not like looking to desperate to sell it. So that is it. So you had, it was Badal is not the second rank bidder. In the second bid that went out, it was not. I don't know who the principals are, but there was another bid. I know there are two bids that we got, and the second bid was around 80-something million, 86, I think.
All right.
So please, the newspaper has to be consistent too. I can remember how inconsistent you are over time, and credibility is not there.
Guyana is at present before that's my second question, the U.S. Exim Bank for US $646 million loan, and here at home a Canadian company managed to flip a portion of our gold field without any substantial investment and is walking away with $638 million. Do you care to comment on that, sir?
So which gold field was flipped for $638 million? Which one was that? US dollars?
The OCO investment.
And you're sure that somebody walked away with 638 with Kaichur News figures? Yeah, no, you're showing me your own newspaper and you want me to believe that? I just don't listen. Let me give advice to the journalists. I don't want the journalists to be criticizing journalists, but don't believe your own propaganda. if you have to look at a lot of these things in nuance. People, I don't know who's walking away with 6 something, but I made it clear that in the business environment now, so if the oil and gas sector, remember we dealt with this issue of flipping. So first, on oil and gas, Kaicho News said, we handpicked and gave a few Guyanese who had no experience oil and gas blocks offshore. That was the first point they made, saying it's corrupt, that these guys are now flipping it to the big companies and making a lot of money. So when we went out to the auction, we had a choice to say, don't give any Guyanese. Now, the second point they're making, contradictory to that one, is that only foreigners are reaping the benefits. Guyanese can't get no benefits. No Guyanese will get oil and gas blocks. And the ones who got are corrupt because they're flipping it. So contradictory. So we had this dilemma. How do we get Guyanese involved and at the same time we give people, well, we can prevent flipping to take place. So we came up with this configuration in the auction that we're going to forego experience and put in a huge signing bonus when there was no signing bonus before, even because Exxon paid this signing bonus of 18 million for when they were going into production. This is just exploration license. Just to explore, you have to pay a signing bonus now. So we'll put in a big signing bonus there because you can't prevent people from going for partnerships. And that's how we managed to get a Guyanese company getting 2 blocks, but they would have to pay 10 million in one and then for the shallow water and 20 million as signing bonus. So even if they flip, the state earns 30 million US dollars once you can conclude the agreement because you can't prevent that from happening. Companies often develop reserves. So I will take a project and I will do all that I can to prove reserves, do everything. And then I sell the company. People sell their companies all the time. I pointed out this is not unusual in many parts of the world. So I have no doubt that a company may be selling the project here. But if you can make, I doubt the figure. I doubt the figure. Because, so 1. 2, that now with the price of gold where it is, they would maybe be able to sell it for higher because of the value of the gold. But if gold prices fall to $800 next per ounce or $1,000 per ounce in 2 years, and it can go up and down, that nobody would want to buy it. They'd be stuck with the project too. This is how the world of business operates. Glenn Lal conks everybody money. He conks who's making this, checking this man, etc. Remember, he was counting how the Russians were ripping off the people the bauxite. And I said to him, you take over the bauxite industry in the Berbice River. You take it over, you make all the money, we'll give you every concession. What happened? The people walk away and left. Nobody don't have jobs there anymore because of the same hounding of people like Glenn Lal, etc., counting everybody money and can't even, don't have. This is a tabloid paper. Nobody takes it seriously, can't even assess some of these things. So I would question you're using your own headline to justify your thing.
No, I'm just one.
Yeah.
Based on what you said there, are you saying that you're not aware that this company?
I'm saying I'm not aware about any flipping, but flipping is not something you have to consult the government of Guyana on. So, and I'm saying I will doubt that Kaicho News has the story accurate. I'm prepared to put my head on the block that Kaicho has it inaccurate. And even without knowing the issue, I can put my head on the block. Normally, I have to know the issue before. I have so much confidence in your ability to lie that not you, but Kaichur News, that I'm prepared to put my head on the block to say you don't have it accurate.
Well,
so I'm very clear about that.
can you, well, that's
I
why
I will examine it, and the next one
that is why we come to you, sir, because we know that you can
Yeah, but
bring
then
us up
put
to
your
speed.
headline as first. Can you call? Did you call the company?
No, the company actually announced that they sold this 57% shares, and they got this this deal.
Yeah.
So what we are wondering is what the government got for Guyana. That's our
Yes.
concern.
Well, okay. So so you're wondering what we have, but people. So you're not questioning the principle that people have the right to sell their company.
Also an
They
issue,
have the
but-
right to sell, don't
But
they?
we want to know what we got in
What-
return
but
for, because
they'll-
what we signed the deal with Reunion Gold, and now they're selling this this share for 57% of their shares for this amount of money, and then we are seeing that we're going
Okay.
to get a loan. So that's our concern.
Have you seen what the government has signed with Reunion? Or
That's what we're asking you.
No. But every big contract, don't ask me. You have that now. Kaichur News argued every time that the big mining contract should be put up on the website. I asked Ashley Singh to put everyone. Have you personally examined any one of those contracts with any of the big mining company? You have not. Well, let me tell you what the key elements are. If you just examine them, they deal with the tax concessions that they get. So they do get tax concessions for the development of the mine and their tax obligations to the state. So the tax obligations to the state are clearly outlined in the document. You just said we signed an agreement with them. So as per the agreement, what would we get? That is anything that is in the agreement, we will get. But it's not about the change in the value of the company. There's no such provision. Read the agreements themselves. What if, anyhow, let me don't go into this in great detail because I can show you how ridiculous it sounds. If you take the reverse and the prices fall globally or a mine goes bankrupt. So a mine goes bankrupt. The same agreement that this company Reunion has will be for the company that went bankrupt in Guyana. What's the other one? That the Australians walked away. Huh? Troy. The exact same agreement they would have. It's standard agreements. One went bankrupt, lost their money, and walked away. The other hand, this one here might get a buyer. So what do we do with that in that case? That is why you have to examine this differently. I'm tempted to go into great detail, but I don't want to today. Just please do your research too. Look at the agreements. The agreements are now available. You argue for it, you got it, now you're now reading the agreements. Kaichur News argued for it. Yes, please. Anyone else? All right. If you don't,
Okay, well then
Kaichur alone today.
I will
I'm
close
dealing
off.
with, or-
Kaichur alone today, yeah. Last week you said that the tender board made a mistaken evaluation process of the 865
I didn't
million.
say that. You don't quote me as saying anything like that. I
You
didn't
said
say
the
that.
evaluation process was where the irregularities were found.
Yeah, but you were saying the same thing. I said that the Minister of Finance responded to this matter, the tender board responded to the matter, that there are three independent evaluators from different entities came up with this recommendation. The Public Procurement Commission pointed this out, that they were not full compliance with the evaluation criteria. The ministry said that they would look at this, and then I pointed out the circumstances that may have led to some of these issues. That's what I did. Don't tell me what I said. That's
Yes,
what I did.
Forward, what I wanted
Right,
to ask, going
yes.
forward, what will the government do to make sure that these irregularities does not happen again?
Yes, so that is it, and it's a valid question, and you should direct it at the Ministry of Finance and the Tender Board, but clearly we have to ensure that there is no arbitrariness in the application of evaluation criteria. And if you know that the market don't have enough bidders, so you're going out for 17 contracts and you can't give all 17 to one or two persons with the experience, but you want all 17 to be constructed, you have to craft the evaluation criteria in a manner that would allow you to stick rigidly with it. Now, I've seen this thing about, because they don't have prior experience, that there is that there is a problem. I've seen contractors and contracts that have a long track record of prior experience, and the projects are now delayed too. So delay is a function of the particular project. And often it's not about the contractors who have the capacity, because many of the contractors who have full capacity, so-called capacity, they have so much work to do that even the contracts they have now, they're not fulfilling on time. We've seen numerous cases of that. What I worried about is the duplicity of the AFC and the others about criticizing the PPC now, and the same AFC were the subject of investigation, and the man who complained about it was the subject of investigation, and he didn't get any penalty. We had to go and file a criminal case now. The PPC did not do anything about it. So I saw some editorials that we need to strengthen the role of the PPC. We have a multi-layered mechanism for this. We have a multi-layered mechanism for awarding contracts.
A next point that I would like to have clarity on in the same issue. The board doesn't have the power to cancel a contract if there is breaches found, but the cabinet does. So will the government be looking to do this, or would you care to comment on this going forward?
Tender board approves contracts. Tender board, upon a review of the bid review committee, which is now in the law. So if you feel aggrieved, the PPC is an oversight body, a constitutional oversight body. So there are several layers that the PPP government put in place. It wasn't there always. Before we had a procurement act that we passed, we were doing procurement for Guyana until about the late 90s, using some ST letters, Secretary to the Treasury letters, and some regulations from 1950s. We put in place a comprehensive law. The law tells you about evaluation, how you adjudicate bid, the right of the bidders to appeal. We built that into the contract. So that's the first layer, if you feel aggrieved. The second layer, you can go either to the PPC, or alternately, you can go to the courts. We have multiple layers. So if people feel that the PPC doesn't give them what they want, although it's a constitutional body, they still have recourse to our courts. That was never withdrawn from people. So multiple layer of protection that were not there under APNU, the right of appeal and all of that. We did that. We took the cabinet out of the award of contract. So cabinet doesn't award contract. I already explained that. Cabinet offers a no objection. The award is done at the MPTAB, and that is why Patterson's case is an egregious violation. He bypassed the body that is by law that should award the contract to go to cabinet award when they had no right of award. And this is the same man who talks about adherence to procedure. And I saw this GHRA emerged again because somebody criticized Patterson for all that he did. Now they emerge to defend Patterson. You know, I know, but GHRA a waste of time in any case. I shouldn't even be mentioning them today. But this is the problem. So you can imagine we don't have a problem with the investigations, etc. But it is this, it really rubs me the wrong way when a man like Patterson, with such a vile record, a corrupt record basically, could even at the PPC, for Christ's sake, go to some other level. But you were the subject at the PPC for a violation that is so bad that you should be sitting in jail now. Really, Patterson should be in jail for that, for bypassing the law and the tender board and going to the parliament. He should be sitting in jail now. He had a free pass from the exposure, the public exposure matter, but on this one, he should be in jail. He talks about probity, and then GHRA defends him, and he is a star in not so much in Kaichur, yeah, in Starbrook too. He's a star in there, and you have something there. That's yeah.
Earlier you debunked Patterson's calculation on the amount of money that Guyana will be spending over the 2 years. And I heard you mention that when you add the fuel and...
Yeah, so you're looking for a redeeming grace now. So I explain it to you, even if you add...
What I want to ask is, do you have like a projected cost based on your calculations or based on the government's calculations?
I just said that the fuel is, say, 13 to 14 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you add to that the 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour, you're coming around maybe about 21, 22 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what it costs us to generate elsewhere too. Not 55 cents per kilowatt hour. Not 55. That's why I even gave you a little out to try to help Kaichor News to explain this really lying, stupid headline. I even gave you that to try to cover some of the ground for you, but you still can't get up to 200. Can you tell me now how you came up with 200 million? Please explain to me how you came up with 200 million in the 2 years. You quoted Patterson. So don't you think that Patterson is lying now? If you quoted
that's
Patterson.
Why I'm asking you.
Yes,
what is
but
the
then
projected
can
finish
you
of the government
go
said?
back to Patterson and say, we apologize for misleading the country. We had nothing to do with it. Patterson lied to us, and that is why we put this headline. And it's not $200 million. It's $46 million for the capacity charges, because fuel in any case would have to be supplied by GPL. 46 million for the 2 years. Will you please do that for me?
Well, yes. I'll
right.
give you a word.
Okay,
I'll
then.
call him
And
back for some
call out
clarification
Patterson
of what
on
he
it.
said.
All right, go on. Go on then.
On the same note, can you say if the government had explored any other options before choosing to contract car powership?
We explored many options, but most of them would take a long time to come because they're not movable immediately. And secondly, the prices are now more competitive. And then if we bought the units, we could end up with a situation like what we have at Columbia, where we're installing those now units that came in. Now we're getting up to a point where maybe all of the generators would be working. So the option of buying units now and taking another maybe 8 months to have them here is not an option that we're contemplating. And this one is still very competitive, because even if we brought in a fixed unit and buy power from a fixed unit, the capacity charges and O&M would not be much different. So we explored it.
Okay. On the same note, can you say how much the state or GPL is paying to fix the second-hand and in some cases inoperable gensets that have been purchased and are still being added to the ground?
I don't think they're paying anything except the contract price. The contract price has what that these people have to deliver the unit and get them connected to the grid at a particular price. So from the last time I heard that everything is within the contract price. I don't know if it has changed recently because I don't, that was maybe a month ago or so. You can ask them.
You had mentioned the government had written Exxon about the questionable expenses and so forth. Any update on this
No,
since?
the response would not come to us. It will go to the technical agencies. It wouldn't come to me directly. Right, that's okay. I'm about to wrap up, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay.